On today's episode of Paula Roy's Favorite Foods, let's talk about lunch. Who doesn't find lunchbox packing a little bit of a chore sometimes? I know I do. So we're going to try and shake things up with a couple of new recipes that are going to add some versatility, some flavor, variety, and just make lunches a little bit more exciting. Super excited to share with you this recipe for pizza biscuits. It's a new creation and it's one that I just can't stop making because it's so easy and so much fun to eat. So we're going to start by making a traditional biscuit dough, baking powder biscuit dough. You could use biscuit mix if that's what you like. I just prefer making it by scratch. So we've got our all-purpose flour in the bowl. We're going to add our baking powder, a little bit of salt, give that a quick stir. And then I like butter in my biscuits. When I was growing up, my mom always used shortening, but I find that butter gives a better flavor. So you want your butter to be nice and cold. And instead of trying to cut it in with a pastry cutter the old-fashioned way, or even two knives, which I remember learning, it's so much faster just to grate the butter on a box grater. You have to work kind of quickly because your hands are going to start to melt it, but it doesn't matter if you end up with a few little clumps in it. So you can see how this is just nice and fast, easy, going right into the flour mixture. And just watch your knuckles as you get down towards the end. If you don't want to get down to the very bitter end, you can even cut an extra teaspoon or so and then just not grate that, but I'm going to take it right to the end. And then you just want to shake out your grater, reach inside, get any bits that are in there. And now it's ready to mix in. And you can do that really easily by hand, just by tossing the flour and the butter with your fingers. And you end up with just nice little shards of butter. If you feel any lumps as you're tossing, just press them between your fingertips. This is going to make sure that the butter is much more evenly distributed in the biscuit dough. Okay, I'm happy with that. And biscuits mean messy hands. That's just the way it is. So now we're going to add a cup of cold milk. You just pour it in all at once and give that a stir. If you're trying to save time on this recipe, you can do as I've done and just have everything pre-measured and keep the butter and the milk in the fridge until you're ready to make your biscuits. And I would urge you to resist the temptation to add more milk. I can see I've got some flour still in the bottom of my bowl, but what I'm going to do is just work the dough with my fingers to incorporate that leftover flour. So I'm just going to pick it up and turn it over and kind of press it into the bottom, and that way the parts of the dough that are a bit more damp will absorb that extra flour. It might feel kind of sticky and messy, but that's just the way biscuits are, and it'll turn out just fine. And by doing this, we're sort of kneading it gently just a few times, and that's great as well. And as you're doing it, if you notice any lumps of butter, like I just found one there, just give them a little squish with your fingers. Okay. So we're going to put a little extra flour on the counter for rolling out the dough. And then I'm just going to scrape what's in the bowl and put it on top. There we go. This recipe lends itself to lots of varieties. I've done spinach and caramelized onions as a filling instead of pizza toppings. You can do taco meat and salsa and cheese as well. So there's really a lot of possibilities with this. You can press the dough out by hand, but I find it's just a little bit faster to use a rolling pin, so that's what we're going to do today. And you want to get a rectangle that's about 12 by 8 inches or so, 30 by 20 centimeters. And just keep adding flour as you need it. And don't worry if it's not looking like a perfect rectangle at first. You can kind of square it up as you go along. And that's the recommended size because that way you'll know that the dough is the right thickness for rolling. Plus you'll get the requisite number of biscuits as well. And we're just about there. So I'm going to just cheat by poking the sides a little to make my rectangle. You can see it's pretty forgiving. And one more Quick roll in this direction. There, I'm happy with that. And before I put the filling on, I'm going to make sure that it's not stuck to the counter because that would make rolling it up kind of tricky. All right. So we're going to start by adding our pizza sauce. You can use your own homemade or whatever favorite store-bought sauce you like. And you want to add about a half a cup or so. And don't spread it too close to the top edge away from you because you want to be able to roll up the biscuits. But you do want to try and get close to all the other edges. Okay, there's our sauce. You can also add in whatever toppings you like. I'm keeping it simple today with just mushrooms and green pepper. You could add in pepperoni, onions, not too much a volume of toppings. I would say probably no more than about a cup worth of toppings. Otherwise it's going to be too hard to roll the biscuits up and they might have trouble hanging together as they're baking. This would be a fun recipe to get kids involved with. They certainly would like the scattering of the toppings, and they could even help with the rolling up. Now we're going to put on some grated mozzarella. If you really like different kinds of cheeses, you could add in your favorites, Parmesan, whatever you like to put into a pizza type flavor profile. And now the magic rolling. And don't be intimidated, it really goes so easily and quickly. So we just start by folding over the bottom edge and then just turn it up like this. When I was a kid, my mom made biscuits a lot, but she usually put brown sugar and butter and cinnamon as a filling, and that was a real favorite of mine. She never tried making savory biscuits, but I'll have to make these for her because I think she'd really like them. And we're just bringing the far edge to the middle. And then it's good if you put it seam side down on the counter and you can just kind of press it a little. You want to make sure it's fairly even in terms of its diameter. And that's it. That's all it takes to assemble the biscuits. So now we're going to cut them. This recipe should make about 14 biscuits. So I like to cut one cut in the middle, and then I know I can do 7 on each side, and just over a ½ inch in size. And the little ends I often discard because they're too uneven. So then once you've cut them, you just lay them out on a parchment-lined baking tray. And then they're going to bake at 400 degrees Fahrenheit for about 18 to 20 minutes. You'll be able to tell because they'll be all puffed and golden, and you just don't want to take them out before the biscuit dough that's in the center has cooked. There we go. Put these little ones in the middle because they're going to cook a bit more quickly. Now you can actually freeze the biscuits in this state unbaked and then take them out and bake them when you're ready, and that's kind of a nice tip if you are into making things ahead of time. All right, so now they're all set and ready to go. I'm going to pop them in the oven as I mentioned, and when they come out, they'll be ready to eat. All right, I've just pulled the pizza biscuits out of the oven and they smell fantastic. They're a little warm, so we'll just carefully get them here on our serving plate. You can see how delicate and flaky the biscuit dough looks and all the beautiful toppings in there. Perfectly packable, perfectly freezable, a great lunchtime option.
Crisp raw vegetables are a great option for lunchboxes. They deliver color, flavor, and crunch, perking up the rest of the meal. Coming up next, I'm going to show you how to make a tasty Asian-inspired carrot salad that's sure to be a hit with everyone.
When you're making desserts that call for cocoa, it's a great idea to add a little bit of espresso powder in with the cocoa. It adds a depth of flavor and seems to cut the richness of the cocoa just a little bit, but not too much, ½ a teaspoon per ½ cup of cocoa. It's always a great idea to put some fresh veggies in a lunchbox. And when they're raw, they're even more nutritious, as we all know. This great salad is a perfect item for a lunchbox, and you'd be surprised how much kids enjoy it. They seem to have a real taste for Asian flavors these days. So we're going to start by toasting some green pumpkin seeds or pepitas in a frying pan. And we'll just turn the heat up a little bit. So we just want to have them starting to toast a little, and then we're going to add a mixture of soy sauce and water to kind of add some flavor to them and make them nice and sticky and extra crunchy. So while that's toasting, we're going to start by spiralizing our carrots. It's kind of fun to have the little curls of carrots. If you don't have a big device like this, which I got online really inexpensively, you can also find these pencil sharpener style spiralizers at most kitchen stores, and they work extremely well. Failing that, good old grater. You can grate up your carrots or use a food processor if you like. Doesn't matter, it'll all taste the same in the end. But this is just kind of fun to do. So we just turn the handle. This carrot's so long that I'm having trouble getting it started, but there we go. I'll turn it so the camera can see it a little bit. And out come these beautiful long spirals. Definitely could have cut the carrot in half, but that's okay. Oh, I can hear our seeds starting to pop, so we'll give the pan a little shake. Nice and hot, so we can turn it down. Now we're going to add soy sauce, and it bubbles fabulously. And then it's just going to cook down, and we'll keep an eye on it. See our carrot curls accumulating. The core ends up coming out on its own in the middle. And I know my kids love eating those little cores for some reason. So we've got some pretty long little spirals here. And our seeds are just about done. So we're going to transfer them to a plate. Pot's really hot, so we got to be careful. And just kind of spread them apart a little bit so that they don't stick together too much. Okay. All right, we're going to see how much we've got here in our carrots. And it's a good idea to just give them one or two little cuts in case the spirals are really long and hard to eat, like some of these. Okay, we've got our bowl full of carrots. Now we're ready to make the dressing. And again, we're going to rely on the Asian flavor profile I discussed earlier. We're starting with some mirin, which is a sweetened rice wine. It's not alcoholic at all, but it adds a really neat, subtle flavor to this dish. To that, we're going to add some rice vinegar, which is this one. And then we'll add just a little bit of salt and pepper. We've got the soy sauce on the pepitas, so it's pretty salty, so we don't want to add too much. We'll give that a little bit of a shake. And then we're going to add in a combination of canola oil and sesame oil. You never want to go too heavy-handed with the sesame oil because it does have a very strong flavor. There we go. Quick shake. And now before we put the dressing on, we're going to chop up a few more goodies to put in there. First up is green onions, favorite of mine. I usually use just the green parts when it's going on top of something. The white part is just a little bit stronger in flavor. That looks good. And then the other fun treat are pea shoots, and you can buy packages of these at a lot of specialty produce stores, and they are just what you think they are, little tiny pea plants that are harvested super young, and they taste just like peas, but they just look so pretty and add an amazing amount of crunch. So I'm going to cut them in thirds to make them a little bit more manageable on the fork. And we'll add 2/3 of the pile into our salad, and we're just going to toss it by hand because that's the easiest. Scrupulously clean hands, of course. And you can see how fun they look with all the little tendrils, and just kind of pull them apart so you don't have too many big clumps. And get the carrots on top. There we go. They really want to stick together because of the tendrils, which is sort of fun. All right, and we'll put in a little bit of the green onion. Now we're going to shake on the dressing, and you may not need it all depending on your volume of vegetables. A good rule of thumb is that you never want the dressing pooling in the bottom of your bowl, so it's always better to add half or 2/3 and then take a look before you add the rest. So as I'm tossing, I'm looking down to the bottom of the bowl, and it's definitely moistened, but it's not puddling down there, so I know I probably have the right amount. And then we'll add some more green onions and the rest of the pea shoots. You can just see how colorful this salad is. And then we're going to put the toasted seeds on top, just making sure they're not sticking together. You could use sesame seeds as well, but they wouldn't have the nice flavor that these do because of the soy sauce. There we go, a quick salad that we'll keep in the fridge for a couple of days and create a lunchbox that's sure to be a little bit more exciting than the norm.
Rich, gooey, and deliciously decadent, S'mores brownies are one of the most wonderful things I have ever baked. These squares are super quick and easy to prepare, and just one bite definitely made me feel like I was one step closer to summer campfires.
Brownies are great. They're one of my favorite desserts, but s'mores, they're right up there too. So I thought, why not put the two of them together? So I'm just about to show you how. It's so simple and delicious. We're going to start by making the graham cracker crust, similar to what you would have in s'mores. So we're going to do that by combining graham crumbs with just a little bit of brown sugar. Give that a little bit of a stir. And then we're going to pour in some melted butter to help it all stick together. It's important with this recipe to make sure you measure accurately, because if you shortchange on the butter, your crust may not stick together. So we're just going to give that a quick stir. And then we're going to press it into a parchment-lined baking pan. I always like to line my pans with parchment because it makes it so much easier to get your baked goods out. You can just lift it by the handles on the edges, and then it's simple to put it on a cutting board and portion it up. So you just want to stir enough to make sure that the graham crumbs are uniformly moistened. These look pretty good. And we're literally going to dump the whole mixture into the pan. There we go. And then you want to press it down as evenly as you can in one layer. A little spatula is great for this. You can use the back of a spoon. You could even use your hands if you want. The more you pack it down, the better a base it's going to be for the brownies. There, that looks pretty good, nice and even. Make sure you get into the edges too. So we're going to put this in the oven for 10 minutes, and as soon as it's baked, then we're going to put the brownies on top. All right, our crust is baked. It looks nice and golden brown. I'm going to set it on that rack because it's hot. Just move it out of the way. And now we're going to make our brownie layer. So we're going to start with brown sugar. And we'll just break this up. If you pre-measure before you bake brown sugar, a couple hours or overnight ahead of time, make sure you cover it well because it will dry out and just turn into a solid lump. Next up, we're going to add cocoa powder, 1/2 cup, and our espresso powder for that richness of flavor. We'll just stir it a bit to combine it, and then we're going to add in melted butter. A lot of recipes for brownies used to call for squares of chocolate which you melted, but cocoa and melted butter gives you the exact same consistency, and I find it's just a lot easier to work with. So in goes our butter. We'll stir it up. I find brownies are pretty easy to mix by hand because the batter is fairly loose. You could do this with an electric mixer or a stand mixer if you prefer. Okay, next up, a little bit of vanilla. The vanilla is good because it just balances out the chocolate flavor. And 1 egg. No need to beat it ahead of time. You can just give it a good stirring in the batter. Just 3 more ingredients to go. We'll add our all-purpose flour. Dark chocolate chips. You can use milk chocolate if that's all you can find, or semi-sweet. And my new favorite baking obsession, salted caramel baking chips. So good. That's it for the brownies. We're just going to give them a stir. And the big trick with brownies, I find, is not to overbake them. You want them to almost be gooey in the center of the pan. So I always try to make sure I don't overbake mine and check on them soon enough. So now we're going to put this in our crust. And I usually put a dollop in each of the corners and then spread to the middle. It can be a little hard to push it around in the pan without tearing the crust, so this is a good strategy. I'm going to leave a little bit in the bowl to fill in my holes. And again with my spreader, I'm just trying to get into the corners. I can see I need a little help over there, so we'll put another dollop in. Glad the pan has cooled a little so I can pivot it. And one last corner here. Don't want to leave anything behind. There we go. And just smooth it out so it's pretty even. And last but not least, we're going to put marshmallows on top for that full s'mores effect. So you just want to kind of get them in a single layer on top of the brownies. When I first made this recipe, I stood each one up individually. Only did it once. Doesn't make a bit of difference. Okay, now our brownies are ready to go back into the oven, and in about 15 to 18 minutes, they should be all done. All right, our brownies have come out of the oven. I'm going to lift them out of the pan so they'll cool a little faster. Death-defying mid-air transfer there. And you can see how fantastic they look. We've got our graham layer on the bottom. They're a little too hot to cut right now, so we'll just have to be patient and tuck into them for dessert a little bit later on. A little creativity can make your lunchboxes a lot more interesting. I hope you'll consider trying this delicious carrot and pea shoot salad, or maybe these fantastic pizza biscuits, but definitely don't miss out on the incredible s'mores brownies. Your lunchboxes and your family will thank you.